Okay, let's pray together and ask for the Lord to speak to our hearts. Ernie, would you mind leading us in prayer, please?
Heavenly Father, as we come to this part of the service, we pray that your Holy Spirit will be here. And Lord, we just want to bring you praise and glory. And thank you, Lord, for this time that we can get away from the cares of the world and put our hearts and minds on you, Lord. We pray that you will preach the Spirit of the Holy Spirit. Lord, that it will touch hearts. And Lord, if there be anybody here that doesn't know the joy of salvation, we pray, Lord, that they will come to know it. All things. Just feel the presence of Jesus. I know you're going to be saved. Thank you, Lord, for all you've done for us. We're so grateful for your presence. We love you, Lord. Thank you for loving us in spite of us. In the name of Jesus, I pray. Amen.
Amen. You may be seated. You know, as a young child, my parents took me to a new place every week, but I'd find my way home. And, but I really want you to think about what was it like for you when you left home for the very first time? I just want you to kind of think back, what was that like? Now, many of you had all kinds of different experiences. I think of my older brother. He went from high school straight to college. And so he went about 30 miles up the road to Boulder, Colorado. And at the university, my parents would talk to him on the phone and those kinds of things. And that was his experience of leaving home. He just looked forward to going on to college. It was just going to be a great experience. He thought it was wonderful and everything. 17 years old, going off to college. I, on the other hand, I got out. I didn't know what I wanted to do, didn't have any direction. Uncle Sam was helping at that point. If you stood in an open doorway, you got the draft. And so I decided not to stand in the doorway, and I joined the Navy, and I went 1,000 miles away to San Diego, not having any clue. I'd never traveled that far in my life or anything like that. And so I'd never seen the ocean, smelled salt air, done anything along those realms. And so that was a whole new world for me. My younger brother, he got out of high school and went straight to work in the school district that he just graduated from. Stayed at home for a little while, then moved into an apartment, and so he would stop by, see mom and dad and all that kind of stuff. And I think about the different experiences that we have leaving home. And how some, for me, I remember I was going to fly on an airplane for the very first time. And man, I hadn't been away from home, hadn't been away from my parents, any of those things. Had no idea what to expect, didn't know what the next 4 years was going to mean in my life, where I would be, any of those things. And, kind of nervous, a lot of anticipation, knew that I had signed away my life, didn't know what all that would mean, and everything else. And my brother, of course, could quit and come back. I couldn't. They told us, if you want to leave, there's the fence. We only had one guy, and you'll appreciate this, Cliff, because you know what's next door to the Navy boot camp down there is the Marine Corps boot camp. And we did have one guy go over the fence into the Marine Corps boot camp. And then the Marine Corps called the Navy up and said, "What do you want us to do with this guy?" And they said, "Oh, keep him for a week, we'll come and get him." He was begging to come back, so I appreciate that, And so you don't know what's going to happen in your life, and you have some people anxiety and other people anticipation as you are getting ready to leave home. Then I thought about others. They leave and get married right away, and things change dramatically for them. They suddenly are responsible for all these different aspects and everything. And I think about, some people can't wait to get out of there because their home life has been miserable and they just want to get out. Other people, like me, I had a nice cocoon. It was anxiety for me. Now, fast forward to right now. What would it be like if you had to give up your home? Give up the house that you've got right now. Just give it up. You'd have to go someplace else. Now, for some people, they go, No, I don't care, I'm renting. You know, I'm just kind of passing through, I really don't care. Other people saying, are you kidding? We just got in this house. We have built it ourselves. And there's no way I want to give this up. Other people say, you know what, this place is a dive, and I'd love to get out of this house. You know, I'm just, things start to fall apart. I don't want to take care of it anymore. Everything, and all responsibility, I don't want to do that. Well, that's very similar to when you have to have the talk. You know what I mean? About death. You thought I was talking about something else, didn't you? When I was sitting there going, yeah. We know this, I'm not going to have the talk. No, talking about, that's the other thing we don't want to talk about is death. We just don't talk about it, and that's what we're going to talk about this morning. Death. How many of you plan on dying? Okay, well that's good, because you're all going to. Okay? Every one of us. Now, Judy says she's not. She's at 90, and she's just gonna. Most of us are kind of like George Burns. George Burns said, "I'm trying to live to be 100 because not many people die after they're 100." Okay, so you can think that over. But Peter, we've looked at the life of Peter. We looked at his life. Then we did 1 Peter. Now we're in 2 Peter. We're in chapter 1, verse 14. And Peter says this, knowing that the laying aside of my earthly dwelling is imminent, as also our Lord Jesus Christ has made clear to me. And what he says there is, I am getting ready to die. I'm going to leave. Now this says dwelling place. It is really my tent. I'm laying aside my tent. Okay? And so he said, I'm going to lay that aside as the Lord Jesus Christ made clear to me. Now you remember way back when we were looking, probably a year ago almost now, or maybe more, we were looking at Peter, and in John chapter 20, he says, this is the way you're going to die. And so he tells him that's how he's going to do it. Well, here he says, I'm getting to that stage of my life where I know that I'm going to lay aside my tent. Now, what does that mean? I'm going to lay aside my tent. You know? For all intents and purposes, what does that mean? Oh, you guys are just not up for the punishment this morning, are you? Okay? Well, what is it? And it says that Jesus has made that clear. Well, a couple of things. First of all, it says that Jesus has made it clear, and it's imminent. How many of you would like to know when you're going to die? You know, I think, me personally, I think I'd like to. Others say, no, I don't want to know. I think the gal that I was visiting in the hospital, and she was dying. Her intestines were shutting down and everything else. She was not going to be able to take any more nutrients and everything else. And I went out with the kids, and I said, now you realize that your mother's dying. And they go, yeah, we know, but don't tell her. She doesn't want to know. I said, really? She don't want to know? And I said, no, she doesn't want to know she's dying. She wants to think that she's going to go back to her house. Well, that's kind of where most of us are. You know why men don't go to doctors? Because the doctor will tell them there's something wrong. It's like if they don't know, it's okay. Instead of saying, you know what? That's the way it is no matter what. And all of us said we're going to die. And we need to look at that and go, you know what? We are going to die. How then do we view our death? How are we going to look at that? And Peter says, I'm going to lay aside my tent. He's probably got that same idea that Paul picked up in 2 Corinthians 5:1. For he says, for we know that if the earthly tent, which is our house, is torn down, we have a building from God, a house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens. Okay? Now, we have these tents that we're living in. Right now, what I'm living in is a tent. Frank and I have camped most of our married life, which is going to be 40 years, come up here in November. First time that we camped, that I can remember, we were in Lost Park, Colorado. And we were camping in this little orange pup tent that somebody gave us. And it rained, and we were trying to get a fire going, and all those crazy things didn't go real well. We hadn't been married very long. The next time I remember camping in that tent, Frankie, and this is 4 years later, and we camped in between, but these are the memorable ones. Frankie is 8 months pregnant in a pup tent that stands about that high. What a thoughtful husband she had. And we are up camping in the redwoods and all of those things, gorgeous. And we come down and we camp outside of like Red Bluff or someplace like that, where it's nice and cool in September, roughly 100 degrees. And, I'm just really, actually that wasn't the next time. The next time we were backpacking in Point Reyes, and she has an asthma attack in the tent. I mean, what a thoughtful husband she has. So finally, we end up with having kids. We get a bigger tent. You know what happens is, as you go camping in life, you get a bigger tent, and then the kids leave, and you get a motorhome. Because that is enough of laying on the ground. We're not doing that anymore. Okay? And, and then you graduate from that to a motel room where your idea of roughing it is slow room service. Okay? Now we're talking, right? And so what happens? We move through those times, but we go tenting. We got this bigger tent that all 4 of us could be in. And I think it's about a 6-man tent or whatever. It's white and blue. I can still see it. We were camping in Lamoille Canyon outside of Elko, and it starts to rain. You know how fast you can break camp? I mean, we had that thing up, down, boom, boom, in the vehicle, and just no time at all. It can be done that fast. And he says, if our house, this says, is torn down. Literally, the Greek the picture is that you're taking and breaking camp. He says, when you get to the end of your life and you break camp, you're going home to heaven. Man, that is the best news. The 2 great days on camping. Day 1, when you set up the tent and you're going and you're getting to do it. Day 2, when you're taking that tent down and you're headed home. Because now you got a full kitchen. You can fix anything you want to. You don't have to worry about having it stuck in a cooler, any of those other things. Man, you're breaking camp, you're going home. It is great. That's what it should be for us as a Christian. Because in verse 2 of that same thing, it says, same chapter, same book, for indeed in this house we groan, longing to be clothed with our dwelling from heaven. We should be looking forward to going home to be heaven, to be with Jesus. That should be one of the greatest privileges we have as Christians. Back in 1987, Oral Roberts said, if I don't raise however many $1 million, God's going to take me home, like it was a punishment. Gee, I'm going to have to go home to heaven. The reason I know it's 1987 is there were bumper stickers around Tulsa that said, send Oral to heaven in 87. Okay? And we need to be looking forward to going home to be with Jesus in heaven. You see, the Apostle Paul said this in Philippians 1:21. For to me, to live is Christ, and to die is gain. Part of the problem is we need to start where he starts. For to me, each one of you need to say, to me, this is what it means. To live is Christ. Is that really where we are? For me to live is Christ. The most important thing in my life is Jesus Christ. That's what we all need to say. You could take away my house. You could take away my car. I could lose my kids. I could lose my wife. But I will never want to lose Jesus. For to me, to live is Christ. When I get up tomorrow morning and get ready to do the things I'm going to do, am I going to say, to me, to live today is Christ? And when I die, it's better than what I've got here. It is going to be better. Now, some of you have had maybe miserable, tough lives. And you say, oh yeah, I can't wait to die. It's going to be good. You see, the Apostle Paul got beat up. He got thrown in jail. He got stoned. And he wasn't at a rock concert. Well, it was at a rock concert, but not like that. And, okay. So he got stoned. He got all those things, got beat up. He got all of those things happen to him. You know why he said this, to die is gain. But all of us as Christians need to say that too. It will be better there. Just like I was coddled as a kid growing up. We didn't have a whole lot, but I tell you, I had a great home life. You know what? I've had a great life here. God's been very good to me. You know, I've had a very good church to pastor. I've had minimal problems pastoring, all those kinds of things. Lord is blessed. I've been coddled, but you know what? Heaven's going to be better. It is going to be gained. It will be better. I should be doing the following thing. He said, down in verses 23 and 24, he's talking to the church at Philippi, and he says, but I'm hard-pressed between both directions, having a desire to depart and to be with Christ. Man, there are days when I get up and think, you know where I'd like to be today? I'd like to be with Jesus. I'd like to be home with him. He says, yet to remain on in the flesh. Oops, I skipped a verse in there. Having a desire to be with Christ, for that is very much better. Yet to remain on in the flesh is more necessary for your sake. See, back to that, for to me to live is Christ and to die is gain. He said, the reason I'm still here on earth is for your sake, because I want to bring Jesus to you. And so he said, I love living here, but dying's going to be even better. You know, most of us, do we talk to our kids about our death? You know, do we sit down and say, okay, let me just tell you, one of these days I'm going to die. Here's what I want done for my funeral. Now, you're going to find this hard to believe, but Frankie's given me instructions if I do her funeral, exactly how to do it. They're written out and everything else in an envelope. You do it this way. Okay? And I will. Maybe. Okay? And so, you know, but we lay out instructions. But how many of us talk to our kids about them? It is like having the talk. Even most couples won't talk to each other about death. When I die, this is what I want you to do. And we should be laying out all the arrangements now. When Frankie and I went to Hawaii for our 10th anniversary, we realized that what goes up must come down, but it doesn't have to come down in necessarily one piece. And so we had 2 very small children at that time, and we filled out wills of who was going to raise the kids, what they would get, when they would get the money, who'd get everything. Filled out those wills. My parents died at 92 and 85. Same year, 8 months apart. No will. Because when I would sit down and talk to them and say, hey, you guys need to do it. It's like, no, we don't need to do that. They did not want to talk about it with their kid, about this thing called dying. And we don't like to talk about dying. We say, oh yeah, we're going to die. Let's talk about something else. How about that baseball game, huh? Because we know that baseball game has importance, because 10 years from now, we're not going to have no clue what that was about. But we won't talk about death. We need to sit down and talk and say, okay, Frank and I talk about cremation versus, burial and the whole thing. You need to do those things because it's important. And we need to talk, we've told our kids, here's where all the assets are, that kind of stuff and everything else. My older brother said to his kids, if I start acting like my parents, he says, just take me out of there, shoot me now. And every once in a while he'll do something and they go, now, Dad? Okay? So we need to watch that. But we need to talk about death. It is part of life. It is part of our lives. And we're going to face that. And we need to prepare the people on this side, and that's what Peter's doing, for his death. I need to prepare you for the fact that I'm going to be leaving, one way or the other. Whether I retire, or God moves me someplace else, or I die. Hopefully. No, that's not right now, okay? But most of us, we don't want to talk about that. And we need to. We need to sit down and say, and prepare people for the death on this side. But as much as an important as that is, preparing people for you dying on this side, you need to prepare for dying on the other side. Because that's what's even more important. This is what I mean. Jesus says to his apostles, in my Father's house are many dwelling places. If it were not so, I would have told you, for I go to prepare a place for you. That doesn't mean he's up there hammering nails and doing that kind of stuff that they always have. And we have no clue what heaven's like. People write books, I went to heaven and came back. Maybe, maybe not. Who knows? Nobody knows. People come back with all kinds of weird stuff. One, I remember this has been years and years ago, and it said, I went up there and heaven was all purple. Royal purple. Probably not. You know, we sing about grass, and we don't know what it is. We don't know anything about heaven. All those things that are painted in the book of Revelation are pictures to tell us this is how great and how glorious it is. You know? But Jesus goes to prepare a place. How did he do that? He went and he died on a cross. That prepared the place for me and for you. You see, what Jesus is doing, preparing them for the fact that he's going to die. Just like I said we need to do for our kids. He's doing that for his apostles. And he's saying, I'm getting ready to die. So when he gets to chapter 14, he's saying, we're down to serious, folks. And I'm going to die. And when I do, you need to know this. In my Father's house are many dwelling places, many places to live. And I'm going to go prepare a place for you. So how do you get there is the trick. You know, you have to have reservations. You have to be part of that house. And one of the disciples asked him, so how does that happen? And in verse 6, Jesus responds with this. Jesus said to him, I am the way, the truth, the life. No one comes to the Father but through me. Well, if the Father's preparing, has a house, and that's the house I want to go to, and the only way I can get there is to go through Jesus, then I had better know Jesus. I had better know Jesus. Or I'm not going to that house. I'm going someplace else. And I don't want to go someplace else. I want to go home to be with God in that house. Don't care if you go to church. Don't care if Jesus didn't say, if you're the most moral person in the world, you get to go. Jesus doesn't say Jesus said, if you don't come through me, you're not going to the Father's house. And so we have to go through Jesus Christ. Now, if you haven't made that preparation, then you're not going to heaven. It'd be nice if everybody got to go. If I was a Unitarian Universalist, that's what they say. There's only one problem, it's not true. You have to know Jesus. That's why God sent his Son. And so we need to make that reservation by knowing Jesus in our life. Then the question is, how big of a step will it be when we get to heaven? You know, my brother made a very small step when he left home, from high school to college. Took all the tough courses, so when he got to college, no big change. You know, for us, if we love Jesus and walk with him and try to do what he wants to do, I think that step into heaven is going to be a whole lot smaller. Because after all, we've been walking with Jesus for a long time. And so we're just going to go be with Jesus. For some people, it was like me going in the Navy. I went there, I smelled salt air. I'd never smelled salt air before in my life. And I went to bed very early in the morning, like 2 o'clock. And they came in and they said, Jerry, wake up. Breakfast is waiting. No, they didn't. They picked up a metal trash can by a different name, picked it up, chucked it down the aisle, and say, okay, maggots everybody up out of that rack. That doesn't sound like my mom. Okay, what a radical change. For people who know Jesus, but don't walk with him very well, I wonder what heaven's going to be like. He's not going to call them maggots, throw the trash can, not going to do that kind of thing. But what a shock to their system of what they thought heaven was going to be like and what it really was like. Don't be one of those people. Be one of those people who walk with Jesus day in, day out. For to me to live is Christ, and to die is gain. That's what we need to be. Now, if you've never received Jesus, then you don't have heaven waiting for you. But if you do, don't you wonder what heaven's going to be like? And can't you say, it's going to be gain. That's going to be an advantage. When I die, it's going to be good. Now, most of us are like that little boy in Sunday school, where the teacher said, how many of you want to go to heaven? Everybody raised their hand, except for little Richard. Not that little Richard. And they said, Richard, don't you want to go to heaven? And he goes, oh yeah, but I thought you meant right now. You see, most of us, we want to go, but not right now. What we want to do is we want to be like the guy who was what's called an area missionary. Eddie Miller has that position now. This is way back. A guy by the name of Bob Wells, not that Bob Wells, for the other Bob Wells. Bob was here. He went out. He left. He was down in Southern California. He ran a race in the Senior Olympics type thing. Wasn't feeling well. Laid down in the back seat of the car and was gone. Boom. It was over. That's what we all want. That isn't necessarily what we get. You know, the bad thing about preaching is that I have to hear the sermon first. Let me tell you about this week. Okay? This week, I get a phone call, Tuesday, and it says, Jerry, we want to know if you could do a funeral for this person who's just passed away. You've done a lot of other things for our family. Would you please come and do that for the family as well? Don't go to this church. I said, I can do that. 2 o'clock Saturday. And I met with that family. 46-year-old guy. Okay? As I'm standing in the mailbox, Renee comes by and says, could you pray for my mother? She's not doing well. She's in the hospital. She later calls me and says, my mom has just passed away. Jerry, can you do the funeral? 2 o'clock Saturday. I said, I can't do it. You can move it earlier, move it later. I can do that, but I can't. I said, okay. Next day, I get a phone call. Somebody says, my father passed away. Jerry, can you do a memorial service? It was a while back, but we've never had a service. Would you mind doing a memorial service for that person? I said, I can do that. It's September 20th, I'm doing that day. It's on Sunday afternoon. Next day, get a phone call. Jody Foley is trying to get a hold of me. Said, Diane Diamond is in, she used to go to this church. She and Jed moved to Reno. She was in intensive care up at Northern Nevada Medical Center. They're going to pull the plug on her. You know what? Death is part of life. It's serious. And it all, sometimes it comes down and it's like the Lord goes, Jerry, we're down to serious. You don't get to just preach about it in theory. You got to practice it in reality. And so we have some people that are hurting. We need to be praying for Renee. You need to be praying for people that are hurting, but we need to recognize also, you know what, we got to be serious about this. Because Diane was younger than me. Our kids were together with her kids and that kind of stuff. Man, this is down to serious. But to die is gain when we know Jesus. The key is walking with him every day. Let's pray. Father, if there's someone here this morning who has not made the preparations for here on this earth, help them understand what a great favor they'll be doing their kids or those around them by making those arrangements here on earth. But Lord, if they haven't made arrangements for eternity, by knowing your Son Jesus, by inviting him in to be the Lord, the Master of their life, to walk with him daily, Father, help them to know that it is so simple. All they have to do is to give their life to Jesus and take Jesus' life in return. Lord, help them to be prepared for eternity by going to that house that the Heavenly Father has for us. Lord, we don't know how imminent our life will end. It could be in the next 20 minutes. It could be the next 20 years. For some people, it could be 50 years. But Lord, help us to walk with your Son, Jesus, so that we could say, for to me, to live is Christ, and to die, that is gain. It is far better, much better to die, and to be home with Jesus.